Nice to see all of you on this nice day. This is the kind of weather that most people like. What's the temperature now today here? It's what?
Perfect.
Perfect. So yeah, what's the definition of perfect in terms of 75 or so? And so what's that, 24 maybe? Something like that. Not too much humidity, sunny, bit of a breeze. Yes? There has been enough rain for lots of green, but there isn't rain right now, right? It's the sort of weather that people typically think of as good weather. Those of you refer to as good weather. I'm actually not off topic. This has to do with the talk today. But before I get to my point, I just want to establish that people typically think of this as good weather, right? Mm-hmm. And other weather is bad weather. That's what it means to say that this is good weather. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. In order for this to be good weather, other weather has to be bad weather. Mm-hmm. Is the logic sufficiently clear? Because this weather is better than other weather. Right? Therefore, this is good and that's not as good. And one way to say not as good is to say bad. So while this might seem like strikingly clear logic, if we examine it more closely, we'll find that it's a little bit more confusing than that. Today's talk is about trustworthiness. And trustworthiness is a long word, but the two important parts of it are the word trust and the word worthy. So we are worthy of trust if we are trustworthy. We are a person in whom people can place legitimate trust. So trustworthiness is based on legitimate trust, putting faith in someone, believing in someone, and being right in doing so. This, in my opinion, in the way that I look at life, this point of being trustworthy is the center of a good life and a center of a flourishing society. Now, trust to me is the most valuable resource in the world. Many of us strive to be trustworthy, and everyone that I know, which is a lot of people, 100% of thousands of people is a lot. Everyone I know strives to find others who are trustworthy. Does that make sense? Wants to be in relationship with people they can trust. Wants to develop friendships that they can count on. And two of the most important components of that, in my experience, are that when we really need it, when we're in trouble, when things are hard, when we're right at the edge of our strength, at those moments, we would hope that there would be people around who, on the one hand, won't abandon us, won't take that opportunity to walk away and find someone stronger and more fun to be around. Because often when we're at that edge, we're not that pleasant. And we don't always have a lot of control over how pleasant we are. So on the one hand, that they don't abandon us, and on the other hand, that they don't take advantage of us. They don't stick around, but then take advantage of the fact that at that moment we're weak, so they can get what they want out of us. We strive to find relationships like that. The development of structures, of social structures, in which people can trust each other has, in my way of looking at it, just my way of looking at it, but in my way of looking at it, that has been the most important and most central theme of the past 50,000 years or so of human history. It's a big statement, actually, to place that point at the center of human civilization. So I'll say it again, the attempt to find social structures, to construct social systems in which we can trust each other. That is the central theme of human history as I see it. So what does that mean? Well, in the big picture, we 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, who knows exactly how long ago, 1 million years ago, all lived in, something like that, somewhere 1 million, 100,000, even you could say 10,000 years ago. We lived in little bands, small groups, a few dozen people. That was the lifestyle of all human beings. So all of us have come out of that social structure. And the base, and of course, those bands have enormous diversity, more than modern people can imagine, because we live in such a homogeneous world now. It's very hard for us to imagine the diversity of hunter-gatherer bands and tribes. Incredible cultural diversity, absolutely beyond our imagining. So it's difficult to make generalizations, but you can make certain generalizations. And one of those generalizations is that the people in that group were people who you could trust, and everyone else are people who you cannot trust. That's an extremely common theme throughout the hunter-gatherer groups that, anyway, I know of. What does that mean? Well, it means that if someone isn't behaving in a trustworthy way, everyone knows it, because everyone knows everyone really well. Everyone knows everyone. There's no secrets. Everyone knows everything about everyone. You know how trustworthy people are. And if someone isn't trustworthy, they're dealt with. And they're dealt with often meant killed. They're killed. And killing them is often relatively easy because they're just excluded from the group, and a human being without a tribe is dead. And that continues to be true today. Somehow we got from there to where we are now. We got from killing people you can't trust, which occasionally is in your group and is always everyone else, to now we live in a world where people come into this room who've never come here before, who have no connection with our community, and they just assume that we're not going to kill them. Right? Nice. Right? Just assume that. And it's something that we then laugh about. I think we laugh about it for two reasons. One, because it's kind of absurd given the changes that we've made over the past 10,000 years. And it's also funny because we all still have something inside of us that remembers that level of distrust and the consequences that come from that level of distrust. The distrust of people we don't know, people who are different. There's still that something within us that is afraid and that wants to drive us to action. And so we laugh about it. Let out some of that energy. Anyway, here we are. You just go into a store now, you talk to someone you've never talked to before and you may never talk to again about buying some food that they then can't have. You took it, you bring it to your house, they're not going to eat it, they just give you the food. Just here, take the food, take the loaf of bread, you take the loaf of bread. The two of you didn't get into a single argument. They gave you bread, you gave them money, and there you are. This is extraordinary. And this is a certain kind of trust. This is a certain kind of trust that you have for, I just went shopping today. And I and the guy behind the register, we didn't fight at all. We actually smiled, a pleasant conversation. And went on our ways. I may never see him again. It's a certain kind of trust, and it's a kind of trust that we shouldn't take for granted because it's been very difficult to develop that level of trust. And the primary force that has allowed us to do that has actually been religion. Religion has been the force over the past millennia that has allowed us to break free from the fundamental patterns of our species and get along with a lot of people. Of course, there's further to go, but murder is, in modern times, at an all-time low. Past million years, we're murdering each other the least. It's incredible, actually. It's an extraordinary achievement. War also, at an all-time low. Is there murder? Yes. Is there war? Yes. But there's much less of it now than ever before. Amazing, an amazing achievement, really, that religion has provided. And I want to be clear about that. Those of you who may not have been to my talks in the past, maybe you should know I actually have a lot of negative things to say about what's happened over the past millennia. But it's also important to take into account the positives. So that's a kind of trust. That kind of trust depends on people seeing things the same way, people having the same values. And that's what religion has been so successful at providing. Religion has consistently provided us with values that we can share. Because we share those values, we can live in harmony. And that's very good. Okay, let's talk about trust now in particular. So trust, as far as I'm concerned, means a relationship in which the people in the relationship are able to be simultaneously authentic and kind. So in the same moment, the members of the relationship can be honest and compassionate. That means that you're really compassionate. You can't be just pretending to be kind. You can't just be acting kind. That isn't trustworthy in the way that I'm talking about it. You have to actually be kind in order to be trustworthy in the way that I'm talking about it today, which is a little bit different from what I was just talking about, which is the way society has structured trust. Because we often, especially, let's say we're working in a store, we often don't really feel kind, but we act kind anyway. And we often don't speak in ways that are entirely honest. Advertising campaigns and such. Corporations have dishonest messaging, as many of us do. That fits into the kind of trust that I was talking about in the beginning, but not into this form. This form of trust means that we're at the same moment honest and kind. The same moment. That's what being truly trustworthy is, as far as I'm concerned. Those of you who have tried to do this you may have found what I've found, and that is it's extremely difficult. It's not easy. It takes enormous training, and this practice is about doing that training. This practice means that we do the training so that we are able to be consistently honest and kind at the same moment. A lot of the time when we try to be kind, we get tight, we get forced. We know we're supposed to respect this person, so we act as if they're important to us, but in that moment, they're not. How do we get to the point where the more free we are to express our love for someone? The less tight we are, the more we express our awareness of their beauty, our appreciation of their wisdom. That requires an enormous amount of training. And brings us into difficult situations. Because let's say that we're talking to, say that one of our friends is addicted to something, addicted to a harmful substance. And they ask us to get some of it for them. Well, that's a difficult situation. Because you can say, well, no problem, I'll just be trustworthy. I'll be honest and kind. That means that I'm not going to help them with that. Right? I'm not going to help them with that. I'm not going to help them in this way. I'm not going to help them to hurt themselves. That's not really being kind. And so for me to act in that way isn't me being honest. It's not doing what I really believe in. So for me to do it would be untrustworthy. But from their perspective, that we don't help them with that makes us untrustworthy. They don't trust us anymore. They say we're not their friend anymore. They say, you don't trust me, actually. You're destroying our friendship. And it becomes a battle. It becomes a fight. It becomes conflict rather than friendship. So you all know, I'm sure all of you can remember stories in your own life. All of us, I suppose, in just a few seconds can remember times when someone wanted us to do something that we felt was wrong, and in not doing it, it was hard on the relationship. And I bet if we took a little bit more time, we could even remember times when we wanted someone to do something for us that would have been damaging. And they didn't help us to do that problematic thing, and so we were mad at them. This is very tricky territory. So, there's even trickier territory, which is what I want to talk about, which is really what I wanted to get to today. Because there's something that we're most addicted to, even more than we're addicted to any substance that you might find. There's something else that we're even more addicted to. In fact, there's something that we're even more, quote, addicted to than, say, food or water or air. There's something that we want even more than those things, and that we can't go without for even shorter periods of time. You can be very addicted to some substance, but you can still go hours without it. But you can't go hours without breathing. And yet there's something that we cling to even more than breathing.
Thinking.
Exactly. Exactly. The constant reiteration of our story. The constant repetition, retelling, affirmation of our worldview. The way we see things is what we as human beings tend to cling to most, and there's a reason for that. It allows you, first of all, to survive as an individual. But even more so, it allows us to go into the store and buy a loaf of bread. So now we're getting back to the store, and soon enough we'll get back to the weather. So, because we and that person in the store both see things in the same way, we've both been trained to see things in the same way, we can buy that loaf of bread. This is very important because the way that we see things, the way of seeing things that we share in that particular case is very simple. Money has value. We both agree about that. Money has value. Now, money has value is a completely imaginary idea. Money actually has no value. In fact, money doesn't exist. Money is a completely imaginary phenomenon that doesn't exist. And I know that that's hard for you to believe. I've said this to many people, and it typically takes me a few weeks to convince them of this. But it's actually very clear, especially nowadays, in your bank account, nothing is there. Okay? It's just information stored in computers. There's nothing actually there at all. I hope you can see that. There's nothing there.
There's promises.
They're promises. That's it. And those promises matter. They actually run the world. And they work. It allows you to go to the store and buy a loaf of bread. But it doesn't really exist. Money isn't a thing that actually exists. It's just something that everybody mutually agrees to imagine. Yes? Yeah. So we all imagine it together. Because of that, our society functions. Because our society functions, we don't starve to death. And so the idea of giving up our worldview is extremely threatening because it's the threat of literal death of billions of people. The way we see things is our deepest addiction for very important reasons. Very important reasons. But there's a problem. And that is that our worldview itself is endangering the lives of billions of people. Does this bring us back to the weather?
Warming up.
Exactly. Our worldview itself is putting us in extremely dangerous situations. But to me, that isn't the end of it. It's putting all of life on in very dangerous situations. Species are going extinct, entire ecosystems are vanishing. And this, to me, is very serious. I'm very, very concerned about this. We mutually agree to compel each other to believe in a certain way of looking at things. That way of looking at things, it has achieved a great deal, and it has destroyed a great deal. And our challenge, if we want to be leaders in human history, our challenge is to change the fundamental worldviews that people hold so that they're better, so that they're more productive, so that they're less damaging, more beneficial, cause less suffering. That's our job. It's important for us to see how deeply held our ways of looking at things are, which is why I brought up the weather. Why is this good weather? Well, simple. It's the weather in East Africa. That's why. That's where we came from. We traveled all around the world, and now we only get this weather sometimes. But we used to have it all the time. It was great. Other species don't like this weather. This is terrible weather. It's, terrible weather. Sunny, 75 degrees. Ugh, horrible. But to us, because that's where we came from, we think it's good weather, and we don't consider the possibility that that's an arbitrary conclusion. It has nothing to do with what's really good weather. It's just our preferences that have no inherent meaning. It's just a story that we tell, like the story of money and like so many other stories. So the reason I bring this up is that if we want to be really kind, one of the things that we have to do is navigate the very uncomfortable territory of not their addictions. And our addiction, our fundamental addiction, is the way we see things, however we see things. Our way of seeing things for each of us is the most fundamental addiction that we have, and it has inherent problems. Every addiction has inherent problems. And whenever we put ourselves in the position of attempting to free ourselves or others from our views, we run the risk of being seen as an enemy. And that can be very painful. We're trying to help, but the person realizes, I can't trust this person. I don't know why I can't trust this person. The person has actually always been nice to me. I can't think of anything bad they ever did to me, but I just know I can't trust them. The reason is that we're not supporting them by affirming their worldview. What's interesting, that you may find yourselves, as you meditate, you may actually find that you form that same relationship with yourself. You stop trusting yourself as you meditate. Like, why? I'm not behaving worse. I just suddenly don't feel good about myself. Why? Well, because you're no longer constantly reiterating the story of yourself. That's why. And that feels very confusing and disconcerting, disorienting. You're like, who is this person? I don't even know who I am anymore. This meditation thing isn't working at all. Yes? It's confusing, and I don't know if I feel good about myself anymore. Simply because we're not constantly reiterating that. But what is really trustworthy? What would it be that would be beautiful and honest and kind? Is it really merely enabling us to reaffirm the way we have come to habitually look at things? I don't think so. To come back to the weather, the thing about the weather that's trustworthy isn't so much that it's the way we want it to be today. That's not really trustworthy. Partially because the way we want it to be is arbitrary, but also because the weather won't stay like this. And yet there's something trustworthy in it. The sun rises and sets. And that rising and setting, the natural flow of the seasons, doesn't change according to our preferences. You don't want the sun to set, it still sets. That's why you can trust the sun. And that's the kind of trustworthiness that we can hold for each other. I'm going to be honest and authentic. I'm going to do what's right, what's for your benefit, regardless of what you want. That's a deep kindness. That's a beautiful, profound honesty. To find a way to be what is truly trustworthy means that we function from a place prior to human preferences. Prior to our own preferences, prior to anyone else's preferences. The adventure of life is then to function from that place while not even holding to that, while still meeting each person directly, meeting each person in each of our personal, most delusional, stuck, selfish places, without any attachment to being beyond all that. That's the great adventure of human life. We don't only go beyond human preferences, but we even go beyond being beyond human preferences. This kind of kindness is a kind that that can hurt. We can disagree with it. We can wish it wasn't that way. And so it's important as we move into that we're skillful in our honesty and skillful in our kindness, so that honesty and kindness is something that can be appreciated. So what I'd like to do now is do an exercise in which we practice cutting through our own views by being honest and kind in a way that feels okay to us. It doesn't feel so threatening that we would look at ourselves or our situation as an enemy. So it's a very specific kind of exploration that challenges to do this practice internally and then find a way to express it in the world externally. We'll begin in just a moment. Take a moment to establish an alert, relaxed posture by straightening your back and settling in to a comfortable position. And begin the technique by attending to your body, paying attention to whatever you're experiencing in your body. And being what we'll call honest about it. Honest simply means that at this moment, you're aware of how you're feeling. It's not complicated. But don't let the terminology make it seem complicated. It's extremely simple. What are you feeling right now? And whatever you're feeling right now is the right answer. Honest about what you're feeling right now is simply a matter of knowing what you're feeling right now. Being clear about that with yourself. So if you're feeling the pressure against the chair as you sit on it, that's the right answer. Simply know that. That is what I'm experiencing. If you're feeling anxious about whether you're able to do this exercise, you're feeling anxious, that's the right answer. To know that is to be what we're calling honest in this case, in this exercise today. I'm feeling anxious. That's the right answer. If you're enjoying this practice, you're happy to be meditating, then just know I'm feeling happiness. That's the right answer. If you're feeling relaxed, then just know I'm feeling relaxed. That's correct. That is the right answer. There's no need to make it into a bigger, better answer. But to simply be clear with yourself about what you're feeling in your body right now is the exercise. Make it very simple. As you do this exercise, being honest about what you're feeling. Honesty simply means that you're aware, that you're clear. regarding what you're feeling right now. Also be kind. In this case, that means accepting that feeling. Accepting it as it is, not adding on a story about whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. Observing it and accepting it. Honest and kind regarding your bodily experience as you sit. Honest and kind. Honest in this case means that you're aware of what you're feeling right now with accuracy, precision, clarity. You're aware of what you're feeling right now. Kind means that you accept that you love that you meet that experience with friendship. Please remember that this exercise is very simple. It's very simple, and if it's difficult, try making it more simple. So simple that we can't even imagine how to do it. All we're doing is tracking what we're feeling right now, being clear about that, and regarding that with kindness, with love, with acceptance, with equanimity. As you do this, if you wish, you can expand the focus space. And expand the focus space to include what you're thinking as well as what you're feeling. If you're thinking something, know what you're thinking. And even more significant, if you're thinking something, know that you're thinking. Acknowledge this is a thought. It's not something in the objective world. It's a thought. Know that clearly. Know that you're thinking, and also know what you're thinking. Know that you're feeling. Know what you're feeling with accuracy, precision, clarity, and simultaneously accept that. This is what I'm thinking. Meet that with friendship, acceptance, love. This is what I'm feeling. Meet that with love. Right now we're practicing being honest and kind. By being honest and kind regarding our experience. We know clearly what we're experiencing right now in terms of our bodies and minds. And we meet that with love. We know and love what we're experiencing in our bodies and minds. This is not complicated. It may not be easy, but it is not complicated. If we're thinking something, we simply know that we're thinking it and accept that. If we're feeling something, we simply know that we're feeling it. That's all. Having known it, without adding on a story about good and bad, we accept it. This acceptance means that we don't buy in, we don't cling to that story, to that judgment. It also means that we don't reject it. We're feeling judgmental, we accept that. If we're thinking judgmental things, we accept that. If we have the thought, I can't accept it, very good. No, thinking. Know that. Know that you're thinking at that time. Accept that. Accept that you're thinking. If we're thinking, we know that we're thinking. If we're feeling, we know that we're feeling. What's arising in our mind, we know that. What's arising in our bodies, we know that. If we're thinking, we accept that. If we're feeling, we accept that. For a certain period of time, about 5 minutes. If you'd like, feel free to move around, to stand up, to stretch, even walk outside for a few minutes. I'll ring the bell and then we can all get up, and then I'll ring the bell again to call us back together. As you do that, continue with the technique. Now, if you'd like, feel free to bring your attention not only to your body, not only to your mind, but also to your world. Your world means what you see and hear in the environment around you. If you'd like, you can look and listen to whatever's happening around you. Continuing to do so with honesty and kindness, which is to say, if you're seeing something, know that you're seeing it. Be honest. In that way, it's so simple that it's hard to even understand that that's a kind of honesty. You're seeing a chair in front of you. Know that you're seeing a chair in front of you. And also, accept that. Meet that chair with equanimity, with something so simple it's hard to see it as kindness, because it's simply a lack of conflict. It's a lack of rejecting that chair. These are fundamental forms of honesty and kindness. We practice for years, and someone can ask us after these decades of practice, what have you realized? And say, I am now finally able to see a chair. Without rejecting it. So paying attention to your body and your mind and your world. Meet each experience, feeling, seeing, hearing, with honesty and kindness. And in that way, we're practicing being trustworthy, and we are experiencing that which is trustworthy. Whatever you're feeling, know that you're feeling it. Accept that you're feeling it. Whatever you're thinking, know that you're thinking it, and accept that you're thinking it. Whatever you're aware of in the world around you, know that you're aware of it, and accept that you're aware of it. If you'd like to bring this to the next level of exploration, then feel free, in particular, within those three realms, those three spheres of experience, body, mind, and world, feel free to bring your attention to human beings. In your body, you can feel your own body. Do you accept that? Do you love your body as you know it? As you think, you may think about yourself. You may think about others. Aware of those people, do you simultaneously know and love what you see and hear in your mind regarding people? Naturally, what we're thinking about is a thought. It's not a person. And yet it represents a person. Knowing that we're representing a person doesn't eliminate the thought. And so we can continue to pay attention to that thought about a person while knowing that it's a thought and not a person, that it's our thought that we are carrying around, and still meet that thought about a person with awareness and kindness. And we may listen, hear sounds that people are making. We may even have our eyes open, see others. That time, to some extent, we know them. And to some extent, we love them. And we cultivate that honesty and kindness. Seeing you just as you really are. I care about you. I don't need to imagine that you're someone else in order to care about you. But seeing you as you are, I care about you. This is something that we can practice. If you'd like, you can take advantage of this opportunity to practice that.
As we consider people, one of the most important things to be aware of is the question, do we need to tell a story about them in order to love them? Meaning that we see someone, perhaps we feel judgmental. That's a story. One thing we can do is tell another story. But this exercise isn't about that. It's not about overcoming judgment with judgment. It's about dropping the story about them, the made-up them, the them that we create and own. And just seeing that person. Is it possible to love the direct experience? Love in this case means that we're not in any conflict with them. In this case, love means that we're in no conflict with the person we're aware of. This is the place from which we can act even in ways that that person may disagree with and still be trustworthy.
This is a time for discussion, questions, answers, reports on your experience, whatever you'd like.
Well, it was a very, I feel like it was a lot happened for me. And I think it started, I feel like I got something like that I didn't have before. And it started with the meditation part about accepting, my own humanity, with my faults and strengths and weaknesses completely, and being honest about that. And I used fair, interchanged fair with kind.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like we went through this thing where, at one point I just happened to catch the casing of the window.
Mm.
And that was my focus.
Mm-hmm.
And, I imagined, one time that was a beautiful white pine, summer's growing in this area,
Mm.
And I kind of imagined what it was like back in the mid 19th century, maybe, when it was cut down and the men that did it, and
Mm-hmm.
what this area might have looked like back then. And now here it is, gracing the window. And then it went from that to another human being that I might not agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And accepting them with the same exact acceptance that I accepted myself with.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, something clicked in me.
Mm.
I've been doing, I've been it wrong for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about this in the past, and I've kind of known about it, but it just never registered the way it registered. It kind of deep way
Mm-hmm.
that I need to relate to each individual at that level. So it's nice. Thanks.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to say for the sake of the community, to take something you said and emphasize it. Close this for 2 more. Is that this practice isn't really like learning other things. Things you learn them, and then you know them. And that's it. Done. Good job. Now let's learn the next thing. This practice is about the click that you mentioned. It's about the shift. We learn it once, and then we learn it again. We hear people talk about it in this way and that way. And then one day it finally registers, as you put it. That registering is the point, not merely learning it, although learning it matters. Today I had the chance to talk for quite a while with a very serious practitioner of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and who'd lived in a community sort of like the one we have at the monastic academy, a Russian man, and he he put it so nicely. He said, you have to go beyond mental understanding, but to go beyond mental understanding, you have to go through it. You can't just avoid it. You have to gain the mental understanding, try to use the mental understanding to get to that place where it registers. And then you realize that it can't get you there. And then you enter a new part of the path, which he referred to as faith. That's the part of the path called faith. As he put it, you first learn it. That's the first part. You learn it. And then you reflect on that. And then you think about that. And then you're still not there. And then finally you enter the stage of faith in which it's possible for it to actually register. It's very good. It's very helpful. I really appreciate that you reported that, because it makes a big difference to hear someone else talk about the fact that such experiences happen. Because it's easy to not have faith that eventually it's going to actually register, that there's going to be a shift. But there will be. Just keep going. It's so funny for me. I hope this isn't what happens for you, because it's absurd that this is what has happened to me. What I'm about to say is absurd, but here we are, honest and accepting. Is I have often literally had the thought after something. So I've been with a teacher. The teacher says the same thing once, twice, a dozen times, 100 times, who knows, maybe 1,000 times. Finally, one day I actually get it. And I've literally, after that, I finally realized, oh, this is the thing. This is actually it. This is the thing. This is it. I've often literally thought, why didn't you say so? Why didn't you just tell me? I remember, oh, they did. It's just that they couldn't. They did, and they couldn't. That's why. That answers the question of why didn't you tell me? They did, and they couldn't.
So you the faith part of that is the faith that you don't try to struggle with it intellectually, that you let go of the intellectual struggle when you have the intellectual realization, but yet it hasn't clicked yet?
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. I haven't trained in that system sufficiently. I'm not familiar with it. That would take a long time for me to be able to speak with authority on that. I just had one conversation, a little less than an hour, with one person today. So I can report what he said. I don't know that I can comment on it with any kind of authority, but I can say that in my experience, in the way that I've understood in my practice, you learn it intellectually, and it's important to have that framework. That's very useful. But then, with that framework, within the terms of that framework, you then do the practice. That's the faith. You stop trying to make the experience happen that you've heard about, and instead of that, you do the practice. So the technique that I taught today is just one of many, but you could do that technique, and you keep doing it without trying to make the experience happen.
Mm-hmm.
That you are aware of and that you understand and that you want even, but you set that aside and have faith that once the work is done, all will be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the shift, and it's something that I'm always encouraging us to do. Do it. That's something I say a lot. Do the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. Don't just think it. Don't try to manipulate it. Just do the technique. And then do the technique, and then do the technique. And trust, have faith that when the window is all cleaned off, it will be clear. You'll be able to see out what's really there. So the shift, it sounds strange and with the metaphor that I'm about to use, which is my own metaphor, so take it with a grain of salt. But it hasn't been, it's not tested. Most of the metaphors that I use have been tested over centuries, but this one's only been tested over a year or so. So I don't know how useful it really is yet, but it's kind of like, I wonder if I can do this. No, I can't. Two of my favorite metaphors, I can't turn them into one metaphor. Just thought of it the first time just now. I don't think it's going to work. Maybe next week I can pull that off. It's going to take a lot of cleverness. So it's like this. Maybe I'll just give you both metaphors, and then you can tell me if there's any way to bring them into one. If there were, that would be amazing. I don't think there is. So one is that you have a window, and it's really dirty, and you can't see out of it at all. Okay? So someone tells you, you know what? Outside, it's beautiful, sunny day, and there's grass, and probably from your perspective, you're seeing cedar trees. Is that correct? So there's some cedar trees out there, and up there, maybe you can't see it from my perspective anyway, there's blue sky with clouds. It's great. The intellectual part is that you then paint on the window a beautiful sunny day with cedars and such. You paint that beautiful scene on the window. And now you know that that's what it looks like, and it's true. It's not untrue.
Based on your
explanation, you have now painted it on the window accurately. It's not accurate all the time. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's nighttime, but occasionally it's true, more or less. The faith part is then cleaning that paint off the window, which is very difficult to do because first of all, you put in so much work and you did a great job. It's so pretty. It's hard to let go of that. So you finally clean it off the window and can see what's actually out there, which is what you painted on, but actually it's not possible to paint on an accurate representation of what's outside the window. It can't be done. Does that make sense? And yet for some reason, we people tend to need to paint it onto the window. Otherwise, we just can't really clean off the dirt. First paint over the dirt, then clean off both the dirt and the paint.
So would there then be this disturbing point when you're starting to clean off the window and it just
It's a mess.
Disturbing because you neither have the picture nor you have the.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really what this talk is about. If you're helping someone to do that, it may not seem that you're helping them at all. They may not perceive it that way. Does that make sense? If you're asking someone clean off the window rather than paint over the dirt.
Mm.
That can feel very confusing.
Mm.
And often it's not the right thing to ask, but the issue is sometimes it is. Sometimes you're asking someone to grow in a way in which they can grow. And it is helpful to make that request. It's helpful to actually show that faith in them and in the world as a whole, in nature, that faith in the way things really are. The faith that honesty is not the enemy, that truth is not evil. That's enormous faith. That's really what I'm talking about. How do we do that? How do we negotiate that gentle zone, that subtle relationship in which we're asking someone, often ourselves, to let go of the way we've seen things for a long time. Even if it's uncomfortable.
What if you don't?
Did you want to say something?
I
Sorry,
I don't think your analogy needs any improvements.
Oh, well, I have another one that also works, and I wish they could be one single metaphor.
I'm just saying
It's a good one. Maybe two is, maybe, why don't I just have two? Why try to make one? I like that. It's good.
I might try to make it into one myself.
Yeah, right.
Now that you put it out there.
Yeah, right.
But you didn't give us the second one.
I didn't say the second one yet, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
probably, unless you really want it, we can set it aside for now.
I really want it.
Okay, so the other one is your hands. I'll do this one fast. Although this one I can give over a whole hour. I can get into chemical structures and such, because it really works well. The chemistry of this metaphor really works. I'm not going to get into that today, but your hands are dirty. Okay? You want to clean off all that dirt, because as long as your hands are dirty, they are, it's just a metaphor, everyone. Don't get too excited. It's just a metaphor. Thank you for breathing. So your hands are dirty, and as long as they're dirty, they are both less beautiful and less useful. Okay? Just a metaphor. I know your hands are dirty, Jordan, they're beautiful and useful and all that. Okay. What?
You can't clean off the window.
You go, oh, that's a good way to bring them together.
Yeah.
This is good. We're getting somewhere. So hands are dirty, less beautiful, and less useful. It's a metaphor. Okay. So each of those represent something in terms of spirituality. I'm talking about something. I'm not actually just talking about hands. What do? You want to get the dirt off. How would you get it off? Well, you need a few things. You need 3 things to be exact. Okay? Maybe you could say 4, but let's just say 3 things. You need water, you need soap, and you need work. You need to do hard work. Okay? So, so you have the water, and then you put the soap on. And any reasonable person would then say, wait a second here. You don't want soap on your hands. You already have dirt on your hands. Soap is even worse, isn't it? If you have soap on your hands, then it's just more stuff on your hands that you don't want on your hands. Have you tried to eat with soapy hands? That would be terrible, right? So this doesn't make any sense. Why are you putting soap on your hands?
Dumb, dumb, dumb.
Dumb, dumb, dumb. Right? It's absurd. Don't put soap on your hands. Okay? That would be what we think. But a more mature person knows we already have something on our hands that we don't want. We're going to put something else on our hands that we don't want, because that something else has a special quality. It is able to mix the perfect pure water with the dirty grunge, yes, the dirty caked accumulation. Just to give you an insight into what this metaphor is actually referring to. There's something that's been accumulated. We're going to put more on it because that thing has a special quality. It breaks the duality. It allows a mixing of truth and delusion. Okay, of water and dirt. Because they can mix when you do the hard work and you keep it under the water, then gradually, incredibly, both the dirt and the soap are washed away. Yes? So it's again the same metaphor. You have delusion on your hands, so you bring in spirituality and religion. And you could say, but that's just more delusion. Say, that's true. It's not untrue, but it's a very special kind of delusion. It's a kind of delusion that breaks the barrier between the human fixation on our perspectives and the supreme truth that's beyond our perspective. It brings them together so that they mix. Because they mix, our own personal delusion can be washed away. And with it, religion is washed away too. And that's then awakening. People who say, I don't want more dirt on my hands, I don't want more problematic issues, actually are then stuck without ever really washing off the original human delusion. The people who are willing to go through that step of putting on more human views are then able to wash away both. And so in a certain way, it's similar to the window. You paint over it so that you can clean it off.
It's also similar in that it stands well on its own.
Both metaphors?
Yeah, without any modifications needed.
Yeah, right, they're good. Although I like this potential. Good work. What?
Some soaps.
Yeah, and some soaps work better than others.
And they're more toxic.
And some are more toxic than others.
And some wash actually away and some residue.
And some leave a residue. Right. Are you just talking about soap right now, or is there a metaphor? Oh,
You know, there could be, you can maintain a spiritual residue.
You could. Oh, I see. So you have a metaphor here.
Yes.
That's exactly right. Some soaps work better than others. Some are more toxic than others. And some leave a residue, whereas others don't.
And some are just clean.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent addition to the metaphor.
And some are fragrant.
And some are. That's right. Some leave a fragrance. Which are toxic. I like that. And some leave a fragrant residue that people like. But that is an indication that the soap didn't really work.
You're gonna market it.
If it's not gone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's completely gone. That's how you know the soap worked. There's no more residue of the soap. Yeah, in Zen they say, good miso doesn't smell like miso. You know that? So really high quality miso doesn't have the odor of miso. Did you know that? Lower quality miso smells like, you know what miso is? Miso is a fermented bean.
I use it all the time.
So maybe some use it well?
Soybean.
Yeah, soybeans generally. So the higher quality is the less it smells like, the more subtle it is, so the less it smells like miso. So if you open the container, you don't get the smell of miso. In the same way they say, a very mature spiritual practice doesn't have the smell of a spiritual practice. You meet someone who's practiced for a long time and you wouldn't know it.
Interesting.
You're not going,
Right, you're not going, right, in any way. Yeah, you just wouldn't know it. They're so ordinary, you can't, there's not a way to pin them down as a spiritual practitioner. Did you have, I think both of you have had your.
I just was thinking about your positive thought about the last 50,000 years of, say, evolution, that we murder less and have less war.
We murder people less.
We murder people less.
We're murdering human beings other than ourselves less often.
Less often, yeah.
We're killing ourselves more, but killing other people less.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so that wipes out the rest of what I was gonna say.
Oh, no, probably not. Go ahead.
If sort of evolutionarily that selection, the more peace has prevailed, although it still isn't perfect.
Mhm.
Could we not think that in 50,000 years from now, that same process would continue?
I certainly hope so. That's a very positive outlook, and I hope it's true. That we have, over a long time, of course, not in a clean, easy, straight line, but overall in general, we have been killing other people through both murder and war, less and less. There's been fewer and fewer wars. Over that time, again, with ups and downs, and it's been confusing, of course. There are a lot of, the more you look at this, the more disclaimers you have to give in order to keep it true.
Yeah.
But with all that understood, that has been a general trend.
Yeah.
And so we might hope that we would continue with that, and that there'd be even less murdering of people as time passes. Less war as time passes. We could hope for that.
Yeah.
Two problems, which we should just be aware of, because we should be hopeful, but we should be aware that there's still challenges. Yes?
Yeah.
So I'll just mention two. One of them is that a big reason that since the what we in the West call the world wars, which was really, I believe, one war. There was one enormous conflict that was based in Europe, which we call World War I and World War II, the Great War. That was a horrific war, really incredibly terrible. It was the Great War. It was the war of the most killing of any war in the history of the world, and ended with the nuclear bomb. Ended with the use, not just the invention, but the use of an atomic weapon. That weapon is a big reason that we've ended up having less war since then. And the problem is that there is no guarantee that it will never be used. That is not a guarantee, and it's very concerning to me that we, at least subconsciously, seem to think that we're over that. Yes, a few decades ago, people were terrified, and now we're kind of blasé. It hasn't happened for decades. So it'll probably never happen. There's a real sense of that, at least emotionally, even though I think no one would intellectually argue that. We feel as if that may be the case, and that's extremely dangerous.
We're in denial.
Because we're in denial, and denial turns out to be very dangerous.
Toxic soap.
Yeah, toxic soap. That's right. And we're drinking. So, so that's the first issue. We could easily go from right now, which is a period of unprecedented peace in the world. Not that there's no war, there's a lot of war, but not as much. It's unprecedented, there's this little war. We could easily go from that to the killing of billions of people in a matter of weeks. So, So that is important to remember and to try to do something about. The other problem is that while people have killed people less and less, of course, first of all, we kill ourselves more and more, but we also have consistently killed other species more and more. And that's been a problem that not only has continued consistently for millennia, but has been exponential. There's been an exponential growth in the destruction of other species over the past, say, 10,000 years. Now, it isn't really just other species, because actually it's other cultures. There's one dominant culture, and that unification, you could say, homogenization of the world, has meant the elimination of, as I said before, there used to be more cultural diversity than nowadays. We can't even imagine it anymore. The vast majority of that is now gone. And most frightening to me is that the hunter-gatherer lifestyle may disappear in the next few decades. That would be the first time in who knows how long, 100,000 years, that people haven't maintained a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And that may end. People who are alive now in this room may be alive when that ends. I hope you can understand how significant of an event that is in terms of human history. The most consistent human lifestyle vanishing and being merged, either because people want to join the modern lifestyle, or because if they don't, they're killed, or something similar, or robbed to the point that they must join or die. That is very concerning. And the question I think that you're bringing up is, can the fact that we're killing each other less and less possibly be used as a basis so that we also destroy the various cultures of the world less and less? You see how those seem to go against each other through history? And even more impressive, so that we destroy life on Earth less and less.
Right.
Is that possible? And I think it's very intelligent to put forth the optimistic view that you're putting forth. That there is real evidence that that's possible. We have really done impressive things, humanity. And why can't we do this? There's no reason we can't. We can. Will we? We don't know, but here we are, setting the stage for that to happen. Oh, thanks for bringing that up. I think it's really a good point. Anything else on that?
No, thank you.
Good, well then, now we can talk about how to set the stage for that to happen. How are we gonna do that? Any ideas? What?
Read less.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good, so you,
I'm done.
over the next week, commit to not having any more children.
Here, here.
Very good, so anyone else? Everyone else is invited to join them in that commitment. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple announcements. There's an event on June 3rd, Saturday. It's called Take Steps in Their Shoes. It's at Arts Riot. It's a multifaceted event to raise awareness about domestic violence and to raise funds to support the services of Steps to End Domestic Violence, formerly Women Helping Battered Women. On the same day, Saturday, June 3rd, we have a March for Truth Solidarity Rally in Montpelier. Join us for a day of peaceful demonstration in solidarity as we join a nationwide movement on June 3rd to demand truth from Congress and the Trump administration. And we got a Facebook message from one of our friends in Key, New Hampshire, at Antioch University, Antioch. There's a conference called Building a Better World, and it's a 3-day conference. Become a more effective agent for social change and learn strategies for creating effective actions, grassroots organizing, facilitating groups, developing mindfulness and self-compassion, and mediating conflicts. And yeah, we have some retreats this summer. It'd be great to see some of you there. We have one in June, the 7th to the 14th. The one in July is the same, 7th to the 14th, not the same days because it's July, not June. In August, we have the Vision Quest. The dates are to be determined.
What's that?
I haven't experienced it, so
Oh,
I don't totally know. But
Yeah, it's something, just to be brief, you would, with a different teacher than myself, different leader than myself, different, I guess, guide. Maybe guide is the right word. Darren Silver will come and will guide people in going out into the woods up at our location in Lowell for several days where you'll be alone and we'll have a chance to explore with yourself and the woods and whatever other entities or intelligence, friends that you may find out there.
Bears.
Like bears,
There's plenty of them up there.
for example. Moose.
Yeah. And then we have another Shinzen retreat on July 22nd, I believe. And to those of you that came to that yesterday, thanks a lot. It's
Yeah,
nice to see you
nice
again.
to see you. That was
Yeah.
great.
Definitely.
Anything else? All right. Very good. Nice to see you.